variety of colors, variety of textures. Yeah. So when we get to color, we're sort of gonna do color. Yeah, I think they have some Japanese stone lanterns. I think this is sort of, but when we go to the Japanese garden, is this a Japanese style garden? I don't know. But I think it is because the dwarfness of it and like the compressed space. To pass through a grove or a similar thing on the same side of the path. So you'll see that both when you enter through this and then open to the meadow as well. So, go on in. Also, these are beautiful native azaleas that bloom in, I think, early spring, which are very beautiful, and they smell good.
Is this not, this is on this week's quiz.
If you need to do your 25% through. Oh, yeah.
Silver.
Okay, so here's the grove she was mentioning. These azaleas smell quite nice in the spring. They are native. We've got two options for this little pathway. Val chose the road less taken. We are going along with the lemmings. Okay, we have a dry creek bed. And I'm gonna stop it for now.
It's kind of greened up, so they may add supplemental water, or it may just be we had that little bit of rain. Okay, yeah. So they do, but I bet they do let it go dormant, so it'd be interesting to see next summer. I know that they did replant this recently, like maybe a year or two ago, because over time, I don't know, I think they just decided to start over. But, oh, butterflies! Questions?
This sounds silly at first, but I'm thinking about the grasses. Everything here was planted by them. There weren't like these grasses propagating themselves.
I mean, the poppies probably did, and then the achalia will spread by rhizomes, and maybe some of the other wildflowers too will spread by seed. But the grass plugs, the bunch grasses, I'm sure they plugged it, and they may seed as well. But part of it is if you don't know, like what. When it's someone was just asking, like, cause this is my garden in San Francisco. I have native grasses, and what I love about it, design-wise, and just like time-wise, it's like the changeability, which I think is hard. We've been talking about how that's a hard sell for clients. Yeah. I mean, hopefully residential clients will shift, but like commercial clients aren't gonna want this. They're gonna want Lomandra green all the time. Yeah. You know, don't have to do anything. But for a backyard, and like there's bumblebees and butterflies, and for me, I love it, and I don't mind when it totally looks blank, like bare dirt. And for me, I've had it so long, I know it'll come back. So I'm like, oh good, I'm not spending any water on that. But it's really fun to like right now it's poppies and achalia and cinquefoil, is that what your quiz? What's the botanic name? The yellow?
What's the yellow? Potentilla
gracillus. Potentilla gracillus. And is that an annual or perennial? It has a similar How many species? I'm not sure, but probably, so Stipropulchra, purple needlegrass, that's a very persistent one. That's a lot of what you see. So we can kind of look for tags. So I think that's the main grass here. And I found in my garden that that's the most persistent, and that's the one that has the super deep roots. It's also our state grass. And they go between, I guess it's back to stipa now, but it goes between stipa and nacella. When I first started my career, it was stipa, then it went to Nocella, and now it's back to Stipe. So, but yeah, so right now, I mean, color-wise, it's very lovely. I think the yellow with the orange with the pale white is very, and we can see what it looks like, some monkey flowers, or what's that? Some kind of daisy back there. Or even like the stalks of.
Looks like sorrel almost.
I don't know.
Those rusty, yeah.
That looks like
I thought that was sorrel.
And so this is a dry creek that I was talking about. So the water will flow from the
Heather, I could tell you
that way.
because of where you draw that line.
So that's all this is man-made. You guys know that Golden Gate Park is sand dunes, right? There was nothing
All
here.
of San Francisco was, right?
Not all of it, because like there are hills, like serpentine hills,
Oh, okay.
Bernal and Potrero.
So the drainage must be good.
And so everything is created here. So as planting designers, like, you know, this is all decisions someone made. Ron, let's go. And so spatially, so this is a bit more narrow than the big. So in the Grassland archetype, you know, they talk about expansiveness and rolling hills, but this is, you know, the circumstance of this garden. This is more like a little pocket, an opening in a bigger, but also I want you to see how he, and this is very deliberate, the layering. So you have this open space, flat, open, and then you've got the chaparral shrubs, manzanitas, and some ceanothus over there. And then there's the tree layer beyond. So there is, like, I think this is one of the most successful parts of the Arboretum because of the spatial composition that he's made and feeling enclosed, and the layers. And this manzanitas here, I've been watching this grow over the years. This kind of a pivot point. It's getting really big now, like, and it looks like it's might be failing as well. Then there's this awesome buckeye to the left, which we'll see. So yeah, it's like interesting to get older and see your trees get bigger. Also, I just want to point out this on the left is a serpentine area. So serpentine is a very, so if you guys don't know about serpentine, Stu's probably talked about this. It's actually toxic to plants, to a lot of plants. So in that way, it favors natives because the natives that have evolved with serpentine don't have to compete with all these other plants. This is not actually serpentine because we're in the dunes, so they've created this as well. So that very blue rock, it's very friable, which means it breaks up, so you get this mulch. So Potrero Hill is serpentine. That's where I live, and you'll see these. Actually, I'm sad because they're starting to develop more of it. But you used to see a lot of corners in Potrero Hill had these big cliffs where they didn't develop, but now you'll see people buy it and make a wall, and so you don't see it as much. But there still are some cliffs there. But yeah, the rock mulch is part of it, and actually Berkeley has another, which Ron Let's Go did as well, serpentine section, which may actually be real serpentine or it might be created, I'm not sure. But this is created, and so they had to bring in these rocks. And so yeah, so if you look at the tags, there'll be a very specific palette of plants. This is a Franciscan manzanita, which they thought was extinct until they found one in the Presidio, which supposedly no one is supposed to know where it is. I don't know where it is. And so they've propagated it. So all of these that you see are clones, but it's actually a great plant. I've used it in Potrero Hill. The spreading nature of it, and I love kind of the, you know, the waves and low, so it's pretty nice. Yeah, and so there's still grasses, manzanitas, irises.
Isn't serpentine the state rock?
Yes, it is.
State rock, state grass.
Toxic with naturally occurring asbestos. Yes, let's go in the circle. I've never seen it. But yeah, these so woodland people, chaparral people, you feel the quality. I mean, unfortunately, it looks like it's failing, but this beautiful, the scale of it with your body and the space it makes. That's going to be really a great plant to use. You've got your concept, you've got your bubbles, you've got, okay, I want a 4-foot path to this 20-foot circle, you know. So I'm just going to show you my my workflow, which you can adapt. So this is the site, 50 by 100 on 1/8 inch. And so I think I showed you this, a snippet of this. So I did the forest archetype, and so my design idea was just cruciform. I think it's a 4-foot path to probably a 20-foot circle. Actually, this is 20 feet apart, I remember. So this is something you could do. I did this in AutoCAD because I know AutoCAD really well, but this is something you could do by hand with your scale, with your pencil, and your circle template. So, you know, so I've really thought about, you know, how far apart are these trees? 20 feet, you know, and so really dialing in how many trees can I realistically get on this size, but also still have this feeling of a forest. And so, you know, so the design I had, and I think I remember what it was. These were Acer circinatum ring in the middle, so that's a smaller scale vine maple. So deciduous, fall color, and then this was I want to say Acer macrophyllum, but it's my memory of it. But again, like the process is, that could be the first design, but then it could be like, no, I want it to be evergreen to contrast with that, you know. So you're just playing with the concept, and so you don't need to solve it totally, but you should have some level of, you know, the path, the space, the species, the layout. And so I have a very, like, this is, I laid it out with an array command, so it's very evenly spaced. So this geometric space and path, and although the vine maple is very much like the manzanita, so it has very looseness to it. So even though it's a laid out perfect ring, it will have some you know, movement to it. And then these are all just randomly placed. So I got 3 in each. And I thought about, you know, where is it, you know, when you enter. So I'm picturing myself in the space, like entering, like, oh, there's a tree next to me, and then I see these other trees stacked up behind. And so these are just placed, like I think we talked about it in one lecture, like this kind of bounce to, as you move through, you experience it. And so that's, and that just could be a concept. This is something, if I were to actually build this, you might start with this layout and then you move through it and you're like, I need to tweak that, or I need to move that. So, but for the concept that we're doing, so yeah, so it can be as simple as this is what I'm trying to tell you guys, and just have a narrative. And so in terms of the graphics, then, so if you did this, I'm trying to like give you as much options to not do the digital tools. But so if you drew this, drafted it by hand and pencil to scale. So it is important that you do to scale. And then this is my method. I just draw trace paper on with, I even brought the pens. So you can order these pens in different line weights. You can get a set even, because that's what I
just did.
What?
You
Nice.
can buy the whole set, like a
Yeah,
set
it
of
comes as
different
a
ones.
set.
Yeah, I bought like a set.
Exactly. And so the beauty of this is it makes a very dark, high contrast line so that when you scan it, you get a pretty clean scan. Yeah, if you want to pass those around, I don't know. And also, I think the sign pen is a really good one. The Pentel sign pen for like maybe the property line if you needed to do a darker line, or buildings. Sometimes they use that for. And so yeah, so I'd be happy if by class time you could kind of get to this level of having some line work for your plant, because then we can move on to rendering. I mean, you know, within reason. If you can always tweak it a little bit. So just traced it, and then you have this. Then the next step would be putting it on top of a white paper. Then you use your Adobe Scan on your phone, which is you get with your app. And then I just go like that as best you can. And I will show you. I even brought my iPad. So when you scan it, you get a PDF, and you can also save it as a JPEG. And what the scan does is it essentially creates a very high contrast line work. And then let's see, might have to do a. Check the time. Okay, it's gonna be hard to see this.
I think we'll just upload images of whatever this is.
Yeah. So this is my fresco, but you can bring it into Photoshop as well if you don't have an iPad. But it's easy to bring this. So you just, as Moira put on her workshop, the little picture gives you place, and you can, maneuver, browse to get your file. So that's the thing. Do you know where your files are? When you do Adobe Scan, it goes into a scan folder in the Acrobat program. So that's where you find it. Then from there you can download it to where you want to keep it. I do all my graphics get it to the Creative Cloud files when I'm working, because then it's backed up to the cloud. After I finish a project, I usually take it off the cloud and just have it as a graphics folder. But yeah, so knowing where your file is.
They still sell iPads that big? They
Yes.
still make
Yeah. Here, and I'll show you.
Is that a pro? I think it's a 12 something.
This is the original
Like 12.9.
12.9.
because it
But
has.
it's
They
not
don't
the
have
button.
a button
Yeah.
anymore. Anyway, so Moira did a great little blurb on that. Stand up, because squatting is really hard. And we can do this more. So once you bring it into Fresco, or you bring it into Photoshop, then we'll show you how you can use layers to just color it. Like, that's the basic. Like, that's as far as you got. You could also, if you don't want to go that far on the digital, I did bring colored pencils as well. So like getting these Prismacolors, getting a range of greens and browns and French gray. It's very good for the path.
See?
So then you could, if you want to go by hand. Eventually it will be digitized, because then you want to bring it into InDesign to label it. And but we will do, so like the basic would be getting a wash in Photoshop and or Fresco, and you'll see how it's really great because you can change it, and part of the challenge of graphics is, especially like here, like what's under what's over, like how do you show the layering, and like basically transparency of the wash really helps with that. And then that's why having different shades of green if you do it by hand. Also, those are colored pencils. I think really effective if you want to go all analog is the pens, the markers that don't
like the Copic markers, or
they're
different.
I think they are Prismacolor. They're like come with two sides. Like there's a point on one side and a flat. What are they called?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, so they'll have all these colors, and I think that's very effective. I don't have any, because the thing that's great about Fresco and Photoshop is you can have colored pencils, you can have it look like everything in the same program, but if you really, I just want to be open to if you're overwhelmed by digital, go to the shop and buy some pens and pencils and we'll do it. And so I think so then you could, I think if you did pens, you could do another layer of trace to color and then scan that and put it together. So essentially like Fresco and Adobe, if you think of the layers, they're like layers of trace, right? And so you're not wrecking your line work when you put another layer on it.
What I'm trying to figure out from the technology is if I wanted to draw those trees in Adobe, like when I'm doing it by hand on paper, I have a circle template that I can use to kind of hold the circle.
Yeah.
How do I get how do I do the forms?
Yeah, so it depends what program you're using. So Moira hinted at vector versus pixel. So Photoshop is pixels, and so they're, and then Illustrator is vector. And the problem is when you're on the computer, the mouse, it's like clunky to draw, and it hurts your hand.
Yeah.
The stylus is better. Like how I do it, I would draw this, and I'll show this on the video, or when we meet on Zoom, it'll be easier to show you like so my work process is really I do this, I make a PDF of this, I bring that into Fresco, and then I draw this in Fresco as the line work, which I learned from you. I should do vector, but I always do pixels, but it also doesn't matter. It depends on how zoomed in you are. But,
Yeah.
I just want to buy someone else's.
You can go on Google Images, look up like a palette of circle templates, and then import it as an image and use it.
You can also
use other
make
people's circle templates.
There's a lot of ways to do
That's
it.
what I would do, but I just don't know where the free ones are.
Google Images, and then you just put it in,
Scale it.
like the little photo button. You can throw it into your.
So it doesn't look janky.
If you search in Google Images, there's a filter to put on only high definition photos, like large is your friend. Only accept large images. Nobody else gets the cut. So
Yeah, so that's like getting into the photorealistic. I think we should just start with like getting a wash color.
Yeah, that I can do.
Okay, good. All right, if you already know how to do that. Right. Yeah. I mean, like that's the thing, because that gives you the changeability, because it's the contrast. Like, you typically have, if you remember one of the images I showed you, like ABC zone. So you really just need 3 colors that are distinguished enough to it's a diagram, right? But then if you want to get into the fancy, which I was really impressed with Moira's, like stealing the tree and turning it into a canopy, it was awesome. And like fading out the edges. And so I guess the point also is just to instill this spirit of exploration and find, we can share tips, but there's just so many ways to do the same things. And like I was telling Moira, like I'm a total hack, like, and that could be either inspiring to you, like, because you can be a hack too, or it can be frustrating if you want to be more like Stephanie, who really knows what she's doing.
But that's where YouTube comes in.
Properly, but I mean, if it works, right? And if so, and I mean, I'm learning all the time too. So it's more just like to get an attitude of this is fun, and oh, that's cool, I want to try that, or no, I'm just going to keep it super simple because I got to get through this, and just like to just be engaged with the interface. And so like what I want to get to is like the very basic Photoshop stuff, which is layers, resolution, selection tools, which relates to layers as well, like selecting things, being able to copy things and change things, and transparency. That's my vibe, is like very transparent washes, and so I keep it really simple, and you can too. So
I have a quick question.
yeah.
So, sort of along the line of the circle templates, if we're trying to lay out like the shapes on our base map in Illustrator or anything like that, does it tell us scale?
There is. I do not know Illustrator at all, so
There's a thing I cover in the demo, and you'll just use a grid. There's a grid function that you'll match up to your bar scale, and then you just match the grid size to your bar scale, and it's as if your image is now on graph paper that you can design to scale using that.
But I think if you're not, I mean, you could go for it, but I feel like drawing by hand and then tracing it, or even if you draw by, however you draw to scale, then you can bring it in to Photoshop and you can do whatever you want in there. I think drafting in Illustrator or Fresco is a lot harder for me, but I would say, keep it simple.
Yeah.
But there is a way you could do that. But I don't think people would actually do that in the profession. They would draft in a drafting program like AutoCAD or Vectorworks, so it's also like choosing the program that is doing the thing you want it to do. And so in terms of the workflow, like drafting by hand with a scale, Vectorworks or AutoCAD, I mean, yes, you could do it in Illustrator with the grid, but I think that's a lot harder. And also maybe not meant to do that. But
It's not meant to do that. That's my biggest beef with
drafting
Fresco,
by hand
honestly.
is probably the easiest. You guys know how to do that.
Yeah.
And then so that's the drafting part, the scale and the template to get a circle to the scale you want. Then scanning, and then it's rendering. So that's color and maybe squiggly lines or bringing in photorealistic things. That's the render layer. And then there's the InDesign, which is the labeling and the title block and the laying out images. So that's the basic workflow: drafting, rendering, labeling, and title block. So
One that smells like chocolate. That was that.
yeah, we'll do a little meditation. Sounds of nature.
The Bay Area.
I mean, it feels like I can smell the air and like feel this air is different. So, there was definitely more along this edge because it's kind of an analog for the, like, spatially for the Monterey cypress that's all throughout the park, and so eventually these will be really big, and so I love the idea that you can spot the Chilean section from these trees in the distance. And so I was talking with Paul's friend over at the gardener who takes care of the California. I was like, so sorry, because these are like razor blades, and like to have to weed in between them.
Oh my gosh.
Or the prickers. And he said he didn't mind because he thought they were. It's a Juvea chilensis, which is the Chilean wine palm, and they're endangered in Chile because they make wine out of them, and I think they get destroyed in the wine. Anyway, so the concept was these ideas of these forest type spots, and so the Mayton used to be up there. This was the Chilean wine palm. Then when we go out, we'll go down this Zoe's accessible route. That way are some Nothophagus, which is a completely different forest type, and they seem to be struggling. They get very big eventually. And I think spatially, we kind of were mimicking what we wanted to do at the California garden, which is this open meadow space. It's the same analog, but it hasn't done as well. And also I feel like this edge is kind of overgrown. Like we never quite, the spaces don't work as well, I think, as in the California. But this will be amazing eventually. I'm just excited to see it chunking up. So I'm excited. Well, maybe 20 years. Right, so we'll just go out and so hopefully a couple of you will choose Japanese gardens so we can learn more about that. And then this is the contemporary, kind of very clean lines, mass of one plant, and then making spaces for sculptures on a more intimate space. And yeah, Chilean wood.